he is and knowing how he feels right now. Do the Houston Texans say at some point in time, look, we're not going to be able to bring him back. Let's salvage this while we can, rather than turn this into a situation that hovers over the franchise through the draft, through the offseason, into the season. That's something nobody wants. But the game of chicken, to me, officially is on, and I think Deshaun Watson is determined not to play for the Houston Texans ever again.
Yeah, and at some point, you got to think the Houston Texans don't want to have somebody there, especially a star player like Deshaun Watson, who doesn't want to be there. So what leverage, if any, do the Texans actually have in this situation, or a game of chicken, as you called it?
Well, we mentioned the fines, right? If he doesn't show up for mini camps, they could fine him close to $100,000. If he doesn't show up for training camp, they could fine him $50,000 per day. If he threatens to retire, they could ask him to repay, under the terms of his contract, over $21 million. But here is, Laura, the Texans' dilemma. They can essentially acquiesce to Deshaun Watson's wishes, get back a haul in return for what is arguably a transcendent young talent in this game, and set up their franchise for future seasons, but obviously alienate and upset the fans that they traded away this great quarterback. Or they can basically hold on to him and have this hang over them. They could let him go and send a message to other people that, hey, you can talk your way out of town, even though Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson and he's a unique case. Or they can hold on to him and have this controversy follow this team the way controversy has followed it in previous weeks. There's really no great solution. They have to pick the best of the worst case scenarios.
Adam Schefter with us all show long. We will get into the Texans hiring a new head coach and David Culley a little bit later on in the show. But Dan, you heard what Adam just said there, and you've had some time to think about this a little bit. When it comes to Deshaun Watson forcing his way out and the Texans' leverage or lack thereof, what are your thoughts?
Texans have no choice. It's done. It's over with. They can't. Players talk in the NFL. There's the saying in football, don't make a bad play worse. This is a bad situation. Don't make it worse, Houston. Because here's the thing. If they're going to decide to try and play hardball with Deshaun Watson, better be careful, because Deshaun Watson obviously feels a certain way for a certain reason. I mean, this is the same player that through years of Bill O'Brien and us sitting there going, Bill O'Brien's the wrong coach for Deshaun Watson. He doesn't protect him. He's handling him poorly. Deshaun Watson would stand up there at podiums and be like, no, Bill O'Brien's the right coach. I love Coach O'Brien. This is not a coaching thing. This is not being upset with the way you're being handled on the football field. This is a culture problem in Houston. And Houston's got to ask, you've already alienated him. You've alienated your fan base. The fan base has already chosen Deshaun Watson. And players talk in the NFL. I promise you, players have already called their agents, who are upcoming free agents, and said, don't send me to Houston. Don't care what they say. I am not going to Houston because of the way that they've handled their prime player. Now, Deshaun Watson, I mean, we're talking about a guy that general managers literally kill themselves on the road for. Scouts will kill themselves to find that kind of quarterback, that kind of person. And so the reality is, some team is going to win one of the biggest prizes in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I love that last part you said, Dan, about the what the GMs would do, because you have to build equity in order to do a move like this if you're Deshaun Watson. And it's not just about your performance on the field. Your reputation off the field has to precede you as well when you want to pull a power move like this. And that's what's been so impressive about how Deshaun Watson has been about this. Like, I told y'all what I needed. I told y'all the things that I wanted to do, committed, gave all I had, all of the effort, all of the changes that was made above my head. I rolled with it, even in this particular year when you trade away DeAndre Hopkins and you leave me with the guys, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on Stills and all of the receivers that he had, because he still led the league in passing. But Deshaun Watson has built equity beyond Houston in order to do this. Right. And now the fundamental problem is Deshaun Watson and the owner. So it's not coaching, general manager, players on the roster. It's between Deshaun Watson, Calvin, and Aaron Jack Easterby. And that's the reason that this won't work. He has to get out. They should let him go and get a haul.
Yeah, Adam, on this show, Mina Kimes has said that if Deshaun Watson would be traded, which, of course, now we see that he's officially asked for that, it would be one of the biggest trades or the biggest we've ever seen in the NFL. Do you have any sense of what a package might even look like to try and get Deshaun Watson?
It would be as big as you could imagine it to be. Because essentially, I think there are maybe 5, 6, 7 teams in the league that would not be interested in acquiring Deshaun Watson. So there are and would be a minimum of 25 teams that would be interested in acquiring. So if I'm the Houston Texans and I'm in the situation that I'm in, I send out a group email to each of the 32 teams and I say, make your best offer. And I'd have all the offers sitting there in front of me. And I know Deshaun Watson has got a no-trade clause in his contract, but let me be very clear about this. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be open about where he's traded to. I don't think he's going to veto too many teams. There's one team I think he would veto, the Houston Texans. Doesn't want to go back there. He wants to go anywhere other than Houston. And so if you're the Texans, open it up to the bidding, get the biggest offer, make the deal.
Yeah, I mean, if you're these NFL teams that Shefty's referencing, you can't be like the dudes on the MTV's The Challenge last night that just decided to not show up and compete. Like, this has got to become a competition for these owners. Like, who's going to step up and throw the biggest punch? And here's the thing, it's got to happen quickly. If you're the Houston Texans, you have this asset that you wanted to get a championship with. That's not happening. You better replace a lot of pieces on your football team because of them with the draft picks that you're going to acquire. And it has to happen quickly because, like, the reality is you want it to happen before Matthew Stafford does, because once Matthew Stafford goes, well, there's one less team that's going to be in the mix. And the Houston Texans' job right now is to try to get as much as they can. It's got to happen before free agency. It's got to happen, obviously, before the draft. So this has to happen quickly for that organization.
I want to speak. Go ahead. Go ahead.
They're not there yet. They're not ready to move on. They're not ready to make that trade. The Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford already had the agreement. He's going to be traded.
Right.
Those two sides have started walking down that path. The Texans aren't there yet with Deshaun Watson. You could think they're going to get there. They're not there yet.
Yeah, we were going to get into that later on in the show, guys. So, Dan, just hold it for a little longer. I also want to speak directly to the people out there that are trying to cast some sort of dispersion on Deshaun Watson. He has given so much to that Houston community, and that's been consistently part of the type of leader and the type of player that he has been and will be wherever he ends up. We're just getting started on NFL Live. The new head coach of the Chargers, Brandon Staley, joining the show next. He'll tell you
their defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo's aggressive mindset paid off, but the details, the physicality at the point, then also the speed in which they chose to blitz really paid off. A couple teaching points for the offense. First of all, you're going to see Stephon Diggs, and he's going to go in motion across the formation. I want everyone to pay attention to the Kansas City defense. Watch. Look at now quarterbacks, whether you're a young one or an old one at home, when you send a guy in motion across the formation and the defense does not adjust at all, they don't send somebody with them or they don't kick numbers across, something's up. Your antennas have to go up because it's got to always be numbers based. I went from a 3-man side to a 2-man side. The defense, if there's not a blitz called, should adjust. If there is a blitz, they've got rules for the blitz more than your formation. So no one on Buffalo's offense is prepared for the pressure. Now, this is what's going to happen at the snap. They're going to send their defensive end crashing inside, and their nickel is going to blitz. Now, why does it pay off for the blitz? Why does this nickel blitzer come home? Because right when that speed meets the physicality, the offense has no idea what's going to happen to it. And when those two hands, as an offensive tackle, get on that defensive end, his job, get that tackle to commit to him. This nickelback's job, beat him with speed. Once his hands get on him, you look at that speed and that dip underneath gets home to Josh Allen, and that blitz pays off. That's 2nd and 8, and it becomes 3rd and 18 because the blitz got home. Steve Spagnuolo kept pressuring and kept pressuring. Sometimes the big fellas got home, but oftentimes it was the speed and the detail that they did it with. That's a big deal for this Super Bowl. How does Tampa Bay handle all of Kansas City's exotic secondary pressures?
So, Marcus, you actually singled out that very same play, but saw it differently. So enlighten us.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things about working with Dan, man. We see the game differently, but a lot of similarities. And I'm gonna take you guys right back to that exact same play and talk about just the eye discipline and the things you do defensively. Here is Derek Nandy It's a D tackle, 300 pounds. You got Sorensen on the other side and L'Jarius Sneed coming off. The guys that. But I want you to pay attention to the Kansas City Chiefs on the back end. Nandy is taking away where Josh Allen's vision is going right now. So immediately he sees 4 guys with his eyes back, but he's looking downfield and a D tackle has taken away that throwing lane and given him enough time just to pull the ball down to get home on that blitz. The most important thing about that is what Spags is deciding to do. That is a schemed up plan to take away something that the Buffalo Bills has done all season long. Quick, easy access throws. The worst thing that a quarterback can see is a big D tackle or a D lineman flash and the rest of the defense eyes being back because it takes away that quick throw action. And actually it paid off for the Kansas City Chiefs later in that game on a Josh Allen throw that was tipped for an interception by Fenton because everybody is playing with their eyes back. Extra guys in coverage on the underneath. Josh Allen has to pull the ball down or try to make a tough throw.
So we see the offensive mind of Dan O, and then we see the defensive prowess of the big Swagoo. Dueling tapes here on NFL Live. Hey, let's get to the Chargers. They introduced Brandon Staley as their head coach exactly a week ago, and Staley served as the Rams defensive coordinator in 2020, perhaps the best in the NFL. Before that, he served as an outside linebackers coach with the Broncos and Bears. He made quite a jump to the pros. He spent time with John Carroll at the D3 level and James Madison of the FCS before that. And look who's joining us now, Coach Staley himself. Coach, thank you so much for being with us. And listen, when our crew here on this show and a lot of other shows too were talking about this Chargers job, everyone felt like this was one of the best, if not the best available. You got a young quarterback, you got a great defense. So of course with that comes great expectations. What are your expectations for yourself and this team?
Well, it's good to be with you, Laura. Thanks for having me. Our expectations really is to create our own identity here with the Chargers and put the focus on our team, our organization, our players. And I think it's so important to establish, your standard of excellence within your building. And I know, Laura, the most important thing for me right now is just creating the relationships within the building that are so vital to your success. And then once you get those relationships started, then you can get to the competition. And we want those two things to be at the hallmark of our program.
Yeah, Coach, your journey has been remarkable. I mean, just 5 years ago, you were a D3 defensive coordinator at John Carroll. You'd never worked for an NFL team. Then you end up with 4 seasons in the NFL, 1 as a defensive coordinator. How has that path prepared you for this?
Yeah, Laura, on paper, I think everyone does what you just did. They look down and sometimes, they just, people shake their heads. But I think all those experiences kind of uniquely shaped me to be exactly where I am today. I was able to grow, develop. I feel like I had a dual education going, but I thought that being at some of those smaller schools at those lower levels, I was really able to learn a lot about myself as a leader, as a teacher, as a coach. When I finally got my opportunity to coach in the NFL, I was ready for it. I felt really prepared. And I was able to thrive, and I was fortunate to be with some really good teams. And I think it's, shaped me for this opportunity with the Chargers.
Yeah, to be clear, I bring that up because I think it's awesome. So maybe other people don't look at it the way I do, but I'm with you on that. All right, have you spoken to your quarterback yet?
I have. One of the highlights, on my way back from, earning the opportunity on my way back home up north, I was able to reach out to him on the phone, and I just wanted him to hear my voice. And, it's important to me to start those relationships as quickly as possible. And so I was able to talk to him then. And then on the way down to the press conference, my wife, Amy, and I were able to FaceTime him and, just get that thing started. And so, in the week since, it's been awesome to hear his teammates talk about him. And I think that that's why it makes it so much even more exciting to coach him.
Have you let yourself have that moment of, wow, I'm a head coach in the NFL?
To be truthful, Laura, no. My wife wishes that were the case, but that's not the role. When you become a head coach, there is no time to have this celebratory sort of period. You got to get right at it, Laura, because this league is so competitive.
Yeah, I figured that you would answer that question that way, which is exactly why you have the job that you do. Congratulations, Coach Staley, on this job, and we can't wait to watch you in your future ahead with the Chargers.
Thank you, Laura. So good to meet you.
New on NFL Live, this from Kansas City Star reporter Herbie Teope. He asked Andy Reid today on his reaction to Eric Bieniemy getting passed over again, as now we've seen all the head coaching vacancies be filled. He said, look, he's glad to have Bieniemy back, but also not glad. He points out, Reid says he was really hoping Bieniemy would get hired as a head coach this coaching cycle. Instead, of course, he'll be part of the Chiefs' attempt to hold on to their Super Bowl title. Still to come on NFL Live, Houston, we really do have a problem. Deshaun Watson has officially requested a trade. We'll talk more about what this means for the Texans' future. Adam Schefter, of course, has the latest here, and Dan and Marcus will be right back. We'll see you next on NFL Live. Announced a head coach hire in David Culley, and Deshaun Watson did what many NFL fans, especially fans of teams other than the Texans, expected and hoped for. He officially requested a trade. Let's bring in Adam Schefter with all the latest. Adam, what more can you tell us?
Well, here's the interesting part, Laura. Teams have actually called the Houston Texans to inquire about Deshaun Watson, and so teams have had more contact with the Texans than they've had with Deshaun Watson himself. He has not spoken with team officials. They've reached out, but he has not responded to their request. So clearly, he's taking a page from the Khalil Mack playbook. You'll remember when John Gruden took over as head coach of the Raiders, could not and did not reach Khalil Mack before they wound up trading him to the Chicago Bears. Deshaun Watson is not interested in speaking with people from Houston. He's made his voice known. He's made his intentions clear. He wants to be traded. And obviously, he wants to move on to a new franchise. I think he's open to a lot of different franchises. We'll see where he decides to wind up. We'll see whether Houston's willing to trade him. But I think Houston right now is not of the mind to deal Deshaun Watson. It's not looking to move him the way that the Detroit Lions will be looking to trade Matthew Stafford in this season of endless quarterback movement. And so there is something of a standoff at this particular time as Houston tries to feel out the situation. I think the Texans were hoping that the hire of their new head coach, in this case David Culley, would be enough to soften the stance of Deshaun Watson. But Deshaun Watson doesn't feel this way over David Culley, nor the Texans' new general manager, Nick Caserio. These are feelings that have been in place that are reflective of how he feels about ownership and the organization, and he wants out.
Yeah, to your point, it wouldn't have mattered who they hired. And also, to a point that you made earlier in the show, it makes it even more important that whomever is going to try and get Deshaun Watson is going to have to put up all kinds of capital to get him over to their team. This is quite a rare situation, by the way. According to Elias, only one quarterback in NFL history has ever changed teams after making 3 straight Pro Bowls. So, Marcus, you got any guesses about who this could be?
Oh, I was thinking about this. Joe Montana?
You were so nervous. It's actually Warren Moon. He was traded to the Vikings in 1994.
From the Oilers.
Yes, but at the age of 37. So, yeah, sorry, Marcus. Close, but really not close at all. Deshaun Watson is not the only QB who could be on the move in the coming days.
I'm way up.
Stafford drops one. He's got it. Stafford into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Matthew Stafford is not going to be back in Detroit next season.
What did their trade partners really look like?
The Saints are right for Matt Stafford.
The Colts as a likely destination.
San Francisco is a home run fit for him.
But how about Washington?
You can upgrade your quarterback position with Matthew Stafford.
Conversations of trading Matthew Stafford are underway.
Adam, I'm not sure people realize how quickly something could happen with Stafford. Lay this out for us.
Well, listen, the Detroit Lions could agree to a trade today. It can't be formalized and processed until the new league year begins in the middle of March. But yes, they're talking to teams, and when they feel like they have a deal that they're comfortable with, they will reach an agreement with a team to trade Matthew Stafford elsewhere. That could happen by the Super Bowl. That wouldn't be a shock if it happened. We remember the Kansas City Chiefs trading Alex Smith to Washington Super Bowl week. So, again, could that happen next week? It's possible. It's not out of the question. The Lions already are having conversations regarding Matthew Stafford, and there is a tremendous amount of interest in him around the league.
Yeah, it's really interesting because with all of these quarterback stories kind of hanging in the balance, you feel like Stafford's one of the first that needs to happen for other things to get sorted out. Let's get to this headline from our Cowboys reporter Todd Archer, seen on ESPN.com. The Dallas Cowboys need to at least ask the Matthew Stafford question. So that's the headline from Todd Archer. Marcus, what do you think about this? Do the Dallas Cowboys need to look into Stafford?
Absolutely, they do. Listen, we're about to go in the third cycle with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott and determining if they can get some sort of deal done. We know that a new piece of information is entered because of Dak's ankle and how that negotiation goes. We know that the franchise tag is $37 million. So that's a lot of incentive for Dallas to get a long-term deal done with Dak in order to save some money. But the bottom line is this. Matthew Stafford is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And if you feel like there's some apprehension or there's some possibility that you won't get Dak re-signed, this is an obvious choice for the Dallas Cowboys, especially if they're going to return back a healthy offensive line and those weapons and what we've seen Matt Stafford do throughout his career with the Detroit Lions. An opportunity to win is what Matt Stafford is looking for. And it may not be the Dallas Cowboys as an opportunity to win, but that roster that he has from an offensive standpoint with Matt Stafford could look real, real good and be really dangerous for a lot of people in this league, especially in the NFC East, where we're trying to determine who the quarterback's going to be for the other three teams anyway. So, yeah, I would pursue Matt Stafford if I'm the Dallas Cowboys and I'm in flux with Dak Prescott in this contract.
Again, guys, if anybody is talking about Deshaun Watson, they should be talking about Matthew Stafford. So, and anybody that wants to have an idea of who Matthew is as a player, just listen to players talk about him instead of hating fans or whatnot. I'd say this. Everybody that's talked about this has only talked about it in regards to should the Cowboys look into Matthew Stafford. And I think about okay, if you're the Detroit Lions, who have a new general manager from the Rams and a new head coach from the Saints, what are their viewpoints on Dak Prescott, right? Because at some point in this trade, Dak Prescott would have to be a part of it. And in the last 6 times that Dak Prescott has either played the Los Angeles Rams or the New Orleans Saints, he hasn't thrown for more than 260 yards. He hasn't thrown for more than 2 touchdowns. So we're just assuming that the Lions are going to sit there and go, okay, this is an equal trade. They might not view it that way. We have no idea what Brad Holmes, the new general manager, or Dan Campbell, the new head coach, think about Dak Prescott. Have they had the experience of standing on the sideline against him and being like, wow, this guy's balling? I just told you guys in the last 6 times over the last 3 years, hasn't thrown for more than 260. And so this might come to a point, if the Cowboys really want Matthew Stafford, they might have to try and sweeten the pot a little bit and add something more than just Dak Prescott going to Detroit.
You know, again, if you want to check out this article on ESPN.com by Todd Archer, it's really well done, laying out the financial side of this, too. We're talking about here, too, Marcus, where the Cowboys would be given conservatively maybe $30 million in cap space difference between Stafford and Dak Prescott. I mean, what do you do with $30 million? Do you sign more weapons? Do you sign better defensive players, right? That, I think, is a really important point in this whole discussion.
Absolutely. With the extra money, you focus on your defense for sure. You think about and maybe some offensive line help, especially after watching them be so depleted. And then the age and Travis Frederick obviously retiring. They probably want to build it inside out once again. But if you can get that money back based on not having Dak, yes, directly go to defense. All 3 of us watched them play defense this year. They need players. They not only need scheme, they need players as well. So, look, the bottom line is this. If they don't sign Dak, they save money. And if they get Matthew Stafford for less, the Dallas Cowboys are in a great position to be in the playoffs and have a chance to win if they do the right thing on the other side of the football, which is defense, and get players on that side fit with a scheme that they can execute at a high level.
Really fast, Dan.
Yeah, I think what you would see is if these 2 teams made this trade, it would become the NBA. This would be like a 3-team trade, where if Dallas sent Dak and something to Detroit and Matthew goes to Dallas, then Detroit flips Dak somewhere else and drafts a young quarterback and completely makes this rebuild. This could become a 3-team trade situation.
so much to focus on when it comes to these quarterbacks around the NFL. When it comes to the Steelers and Big Ben, it's all about the money. Something that was said today perked up our ears about Big Ben's future. That's next on NFL Live. We'll be right back. Went on to say, we'll have more conversations internally. We'll have more conversations with Ben, and we'll have to know what the cap number is to finalize some of those decisions. So then this from Ed Bouchette. More from Art Rooney. I think we'd like to see Ben back for another year if that can work. But as we said, there's a lot of work to be done. If that can happen, there may need to be some decisions on both ends for that to happen. All right, so now to Ed Bouchette from The Athletic. He tweeted this saying he just talked to Big Ben and he said, I don't care about my pay at all this year. He's willing to restructure a contract that has a $41 million cap hit for 2021 that includes $19 million in bonus salary that can be restructured. Of course, those numbers are what Ben already would have if they didn't restructure this. Let's bring in Adam here and the guys. But we start with you, Adam. You hear that from Rooney and then Big Ben's response. What do you think they're going to do here?
Well, listen, if they want Ben back, they're going to have to restructure that contract. They can't have the largest cap number of any player in the NFL at a time where the cap is expected to go down due to the pandemic. And so there are issues for this team to have to look at. And you take a look right there, Laura, at all the players and all the cap numbers that are sitting out there right now that are scheduled for the 2021 season. And again, there seems to be a little bit of a question with each of these players, oddly enough. Ben Roethlisberger, again, we want to see what happens with his contract, whether he wants to play. Matt Ryan, the Falcons could be drafting a player. Aaron Rodgers, you heard his comments this week. I'll let him speak for himself. Drew Brees, expected to retire. Carson Wentz, his future's up in the air there in Philadelphia, as is the case with Jared Goff. So a lot of questions around a lot of big-name quarterbacks, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they believe that Ben Roethlisberger is willing to come back and play, but there is work to be done between both sides to make that happen.
Yeah, Adam, it's really interesting. That's a peculiar list that all those guys really are in question of some sort, whether it's them questioning themselves or maybe other questions. So, Dan, what do you think about Big Ben, especially his willingness to restructure, right? He gets that he's going to have to do that.
Yeah, Laura, his salary drop would have to be as big as my ears look with these daggum earbuds in right now. My
People
ears
think they're earrings, Dan.
Gosh, my ears look huge with these ears on. His salary drop would have to be pretty big now. I mean, and I've read that Big Ben has come out and said, like, he doesn't even care about his salary because the reality is they've got some pieces that they're going to have to re-sign. Like, does he want Juju back and what's the cost going to be? We watched that offensive line really get decimated this year. So if Big Ben is going to come back for one more year, and think about it, I believe Drew Brees and Tom Brady both played for $25 million this year. It had to be relatively cheaper than those guys. So you're looking at Big Ben cutting his salary at least in half to try and come back and play to Pittsburgh because they're going to have to pay some other pieces to make one final run. So if that's his willingness to do that, if he's willing to play for way less than market value of a starting quarterback, this makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh. That being said, you cannot allow this to hinder your plans for the future, Pittsburgh. Like, you can't allow another year of Big Ben playing, not have a plan for who the next guy in Pittsburgh is going to be.
Listen, I understand the restructuring. I understand all of that. And I guess I'm about to drop what you call the atom bomb. Pittsburgh Steelers should be looking in the quarterback market for Matt Stafford, Deshaun Watson, everybody else. That's who they should be in the market for that as well, especially when you, if you cut ties with Ben or you determine that you can't find somewhere to agree, because it's a lot of quarterbacks that you can get 3 to 5 years from of high level quarterback play that can at least set you up into a point where you can win games, have a chance to compete for a championship, and then later on down the line draft the guy that's going to take the helm for the next 10, 15 years, potentially, if you don't get Deshaun Watson, who can be that guy for the next 10 years. So I think Pittsburgh. that Shefty has told us and all of the possibilities that's of quarterbacks that's sitting out there. I'm like, why not start now as opposed to starting later and hinging your bets on the fact that you can draft a guy or get a guy in free agency next year when this thing is wide open like it is this year. It may be just time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to move on and try to find a quarterback that they can run with the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, you know, Dan, I remember this. When the Steelers were eliminated, remember when Big Ben was speaking about his future and he almost seemed a little bit uncertain himself? And I realized it was fresh off of a disappointing loss and an end to their season, but the reality is this team was 11-0 before they fell off that cliff. Do you think that they are in position to like plug in one of these big name quarterbacks like Marcus is talking about and really win to make that worth it?
Not next year, no. Like if they went and got Deshaun Watson or Matthew Stafford next year, they're still not as good as Cleveland. They're still not as good as Baltimore. They're still not as good as Buffalo. They're still not as good as Kansas City. They're still not as good as Miami. So like the reality would be, does Big Ben hinder their future? That's where they got to balance right now is it worth having Big Ben come back for one more year to try and make a run? Or is it time for them to move on, get young, and try and chase down those teams that have jumped them?
Okay, another quarterback story that we'll be following. And just another reminder, too, Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner